Welcome to our distillery. This is where we make Altos Tequila. I am originally from the state of Jalisco. My family moved to the United States when I was 11, so I spent quite a few years there, and that's where I started in the industry. And then I got the opportunity to come back to my homeland and participate in the construction of this distillery and in making tequila. Starting in California, it was mandatory, it's obligatory to have environmental controls. So I grew up with that mindset, and coming back to my homeland, I wanted to see if I could set an example how we can conduct business and respect the environment at the same time. So it was a tremendous challenge and opportunity, and we had a chance to do it from scratch. Making tequila starts in the agave fields. We have been throughout the last 18 years planting our own agave fields, and we're always concerned about the impact that we can cause to the environment with the materials that we use. The agave has a life cycle of 7 years, which is long. During that period, it needs some assistance in fertilization, weed control, and pest control. So we only use FDA-approved ingredients so that we have the minimal impact. We also like using the least amount as possible. We don't want to contribute to the deterioration of the soils, so adding too much fertilization can hurt it. We complement fertilization with the use of compost, which has a long-term beneficial effect for the fields. We also like to believe that we can set the example of how to manage a field and leave no containers, no residual effect in the land. Making tequila, of course, we start with freshly harvested agave. And what we want to do is we want to optimize the use of this material, agave, by measuring every step of our process and the impact that this has as far as consumption of resources like water, energy, materials themselves. And we measure everything, so we want to make sure that we optimize. By optimizing the process, we reduce the use of these materials. One of the main points where water is used in our process is in the rollo mill. We use water to saturate the fibers of the agave and wash the sugars from it. It becomes agave juice, and that's what we use in fermentation. So we find the optimum point, how much water we add to extract as much sugar as possible from the fibers and maintain a very rich agave juice, rich in sugars. This way, we reduce the amount of water and reduce the amount of energy that it takes to distill it. There's always opportunities over the years. We look for the easiest things first, of course. Insulating all the piping where we transfer the steam has been a big benefit as far as reduction of energy. Using natural lighting in our spaces, also big savings. And more recently, in our steam generation, in our boilers, we've been retrofitting these boilers to modernize the carburation methods from analog to digital. That way we get more precision of mixing the fuel with the air, which translates to more efficiency, meaning more steam is generated with less energy. And the other benefit from this is that we generate less emissions. So we have a double benefit there. This is very recent. In the last 6 months, we've been able to produce 15% more steam with the same energy. The compost became a necessity for us 18 years ago. When we started our operations, we were able to send these fibers. They're biodegradable. We were sending them to the landfill. However, in an open field, it takes 15 years to biodegrade by itself. We investigated and we learned in Venezuela they were composting the fibers from the cane, from the sugar industry. And we borrowed that process, the idea, the concept. We started composting 18 years ago. What happens there is with the use of moisture and aeration, rotation of these fibers, we increase the temperature and the microorganisms start eating up these materials and biodegrading faster. So instead of 15 years, we can do it in 4 months. And at the end of that, we have a very light, soil-like material that we can use in the agave fields. It helps the structure of the soil, helps to retain humidity and the nutrients in place so the agaves can take advantage of it. So it has a long-term effect for the soil and reduces the need for fertilization. Our operations here are certified in ISO 14000, which means we have a formal management system to evaluate generation and waste reduction. The other part is, of course, recycling, where we cannot reduce anymore, then we can reuse and recycle. In our distillery operations, the two byproducts would be wastewater and fibers, or the bagasse, which we talked about. We consume them in composting. In the bottling operation, we generate a lot of cardboard, a lot of plastic wrap, some glassware from the bottles that get damaged in the process, and some aluminum, again from closures that get damaged in the process. So since day one, more than 20 years ago, we started recycling, and we were recycling at a rate of about 80%, which was really good. But we've been looking for ways of improving that by having better and easier methods of accumulating these materials, such that in the last couple of years now, we are at 98%, 99% recycling. And we know these numbers very closely because every month we measure them. We actually weigh all the material that leaves our distillery for recycling and for the landfill. With regards to the materials that we generate and send for recycling, we look for ways of disposing of them at a very close facility, meaning within 100 miles. And the plastic wrap, which is one of the biggest volumes that we generate, I'm happy to say that here in Hernandez, we're able to reprocess that and make it into something useful. The other big item is the cardboard. We send that to Guadalajara, which is like 100 miles from here, and they get converted into new boxes and shipping cases. So everything is reprocessed very closely, so there is not a lot of energy wasted in the transportation. Sometimes the ideas come from different sources, all the way down to the final use of our bottles. We had a lot of feedback from bartenders that were in love with our tequila and liked pouring our tequila, but they also told us that the bottles were on the heavy side and of course created fatigue, especially the 1 liter bottle. Our bottle is pretty stocky, pretty robust, and there was alternatives. We could make a very stock bottle, very plain bottle, but the image that the bottle has the craft. So we consulted with technicians from the glass manufacturing to see how we could maintain the essence of the bottle and reduce the amount of glassware in it. We were able to redesign the bottle and reduce by 20% the amount of glass. That means there's a lot less energy to produce the bottle, less energy to transport bottles and finished goods. And lastly, of course, the bartenders have to handle a lot less weight when they're pouring a glass of Omega Altos. To the markets where we send our tequilas, and the bartenders and the servers that handle our bottles, we make it with a lot of pride, and we are very conscious of the impact that any transformation has on the environment. So we encourage them also to look for ways on how they can reuse some materials, minimize waste in their process, and where you can use renewable sources of energy. There's a lot of ideas always being generated by the operators themselves on how we can do it better. Better meaning use less energy, less resources, generate less waste. There's all kinds of ideas. We're always looking for reusable sources of energy, like solar energy. In some specific points in our distillery, we've installed solar water heaters so that we don't have to recirculate hot water over long distances, which is very wasteful. We look for ways of making simple improvements every day so that we can do it better every day. And we have the commitment from the operators themselves, which is the key for making things happen.